negative next to it daily. Nobody gives a shit about my mental health, right? Because I'm the enemy. And what's scary about this is Lucy Williamson herself, she was begging me for an interview. The BBC were begging me for an interview. I don't need any of these people. The only reason I even sat down with the BBC is because they were begging me. I can go and just say my own words and get plenty of views, right? But the whole time I was in jail, they're begging me for an interview. Can we speak to him on the phone? Maybe you can give an interview from jail. Can we have an interview? Please, 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 please. And I was saying, why do I want to talk to the BBC? And the BBC were saying, no, we don't want to do a hit piece. We want to come across, we want to be impartial.
This is what they're telling me.
This is what they're telling me. We want to be impartial. We believe there's a side of the story that hasn't been told. We're really interested in some of the, let's say, what's the word? I don't want to get this wrong. Inconsistencies in the Romanian justice system. We're very interested in his side of the story. There's been enough hit pieces. We want to tell the other side. We want to hear Andrew Tate's story. And I said no, on repeat. Then they sent me a list of questions. I didn't even ask for a list of questions. That's not who I am. I don't have to script. I never ask for a list of questions. They sent me a list of questions. Here's what we're going to ask. It's about his mental health. It's about the Romanian justice system. It's about the fact he hasn't been charged. His liberty's been deprived. All this stuff. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Maybe it's a bit interesting. And the Matrix is obviously printing lies about me. And these are some interesting questions from the Matrix for the first time ever. Okay. They walk in here all smiles and happy, all smiley faces, trying to take me off guard. I already had my list of questions, right? It's all going to be nice and easy. I sit down, and they instantly attack me. They put the cameras on first, and they attack me, expecting me to stutter and make a fool of myself. It's kind of like they tried to sucker punch me. I'm in the club, and they're my friends shaking my hand, and they tried to hit me and knock me out. And this is the thing that's so amazing about it. Yes, I destroyed the BBC. But of course I did, because I'm smarter than all of them. But why should I have to rely on my wit and intellect to destroy BBC with their research team and their plan? Their deliberate plan to try and annihilate not only my credibility, but my life. They are trying to put me back in jail, these people. They're not dishonest. They're genuinely evil. And they don't give a shit. And so why should I even sit there and entertain them? I believe I could slip every single sucker punch they throw at me for the rest of human time. I could sit with any of these clowns. And no matter who they sit with their research team, whatever garbage they come up with, I'll make a fool of all of them. But why am I even entertaining them anymore? What's the point? That was the last chance I gave mainstream media. They lied for months to get that interview with me. Completely dishonest, head to toe. And like you said, they sit with Philip. Are you okay? Are you okay? We heard your mom's upset, that poor old lady. Maybe everyone should stop talking about it because his mom's upset. Let's not talk about it anymore because his mother's old. You're either part of the club or you're not. You have to sell your sanity nowadays. If you sell your sanity, you're afforded protections. That's the reality of it, because if you're a sane thinking person, you don't buy their bullshit. And that's what upsets them. They don't want anybody who thinks for themselves. They need you to they want you to believe exactly what's on the television screen. Believe in COVID. It's COVID now. It's COVID now. Oh, Putin's invaded Ukraine. Putin's cured COVID now. Now it's Ukraine. It's insane. Till the next thing comes. It's absolutely asinine.
Did any of the questions that they sent you ahead of time?
Zero.
By the way, there was no
that's not how we operate.
Asked us ahead of time whatsoever. Did they ask you any of the questions they said they were going to ask you?
Zero. They start with an attack and it became a battle instantly.
Did they ask you at any point what jail was like?
Zero.
What your mental health was like?
Zero.
You completely missed the mark when everyone wants to know what was jail like. And they don't even ask you that question.
But this is what's so interesting about it. These people are so detached from reality, because they are genuinely detached from reality. They think that finding a video I made 8 years ago, a 4-hour speech I made 8 years ago, and finding one line of it without context that can be misconstrued, they think that sitting down with me and saying that to me is an aha moment. Nobody cares. Because you're taking out of context, one. And I said you're taking things out of context. She goes, I'm not taking it out of context. I said, if you're presenting it without context, that's taking it out of context. That's what it is. You're lying by omission. I said that to her after the camera's off, and she looked at me because she didn't understand. When you omit details, when you refuse to put in all of the details, you can lie by including one detail which may happen to be true. You can tell the truth and miss all the details around the truth, and you are lying by omission. You're lying by omission. And you're sitting here saying, oh, you said this 8 years ago. Nobody cares. Because they know me, and they know I didn't mean it in that way, and they know it's taken out of context, and they know that it's an old video on the internet, and it's not even an aha moment they think it is. But they just want to sit with you for an hour, attack you and attack you and attack you, wait for you to make one mistake. If I would have stuttered or made a single mistake, that's the only 3 minutes they would have shown. That's all they want. They want that 1 hour, then they take the little bit. With me, they cut it down to 12 minutes, and they look terrible in all of it. But if I would have made a single mistake, it would have been the only bit they shown. That's all they care about. Fake news.
Did you tell them, did you say, I'm only doing this if I'm able to record as well?
I said
Because I
that.
know that's what happened with Trump as well a couple years ago.
I didn't even tell them, I just recorded it.
Okay, so they didn't know you were
They
recording.
didn't know I was recording until afterwards, and then I said, that was dishonest, I'm gonna release the whole video.
You told them before you released it.
I told them.
There is no contract or agreement with BBC.
No.
Nothing was signed. It was just simply an interview. Okay. Because I think that was very important when you released it for people to see what fully was said versus, and by the way, you know the Philip Schofield interview that they put up, the 12-minute one that just came out? You know the comments are turned off.
Of course they are.
The comments are turned off. Yours are turned on. His is turned off.
Of course.
And who knows many reasons why they would do that. But going back to BBC. So, okay. They come, they want to ask the questions of you. For some of the people that maybe aren't following the story closely, but they know who you are. We're in the car, we're driving, and a lot of people are asking questions. We ask the drivers, like, hey, are you going to Tate's place? How do you know we're going to Tate's place? And he says, well, who's Tate? Oh, Andrew Tate. Oh, tell us about Andrew Tate. Well, this is, okay. What kind of a guy is he? He said, I actually really like him. I said, why do you think he's going through what he's going through right now? Oh, it's always because of money. Okay, so we're at a different restaurant. So tell us, why are you going through this? Why is he going? Everybody's saying a similar thing about this, right? But for those who don't know, there's 3 different camps.
Yeah.
The camp that already sees you guilty, it doesn't matter what they read. So for example, this story here, from BBC came out just last night, 10:30. Andrew Tate choked me until I passed that, UK woman claims, right? This is Alice, another anonymous name, just like Sophie, right? Yeah. But there's 3 camps. There's those that say, well, look, I'm already thinking he's guilty. I don't like him anyways. I need anything to get me to think he's guilty. Yeah. Whatever it takes. I don't have to do my own due diligence. I just have to hear anything. Then there's a camp that's a diehard fan. There's nothing you can do that they did wrong. In their eyes, it's going to be wrong. Then you have the people in the middle that are the reasonable ones, that are saying, you know what, let me look at this. Yeah. What about this? What about that? The people in the middle may say the following question. They may say, and I may have asked this question from you last time as well. They may say, Andrew, okay, if this guy is so innocent, how can they get you to go to the dungeon for 92 days? How can they put you on house arrest? How can they do all this stuff? Yeah. If you're somebody that was born in US, you lived in UK, how come somebody else isn't coming to bail you out? You got different lawyers. How is it that they can keep doing this to you if you're not guilty? What do you say to those people?
Yeah, and once again, I have to be careful what I say because of the court case, but Romania has a law, or the law in Romania is basically, if you can prove to a judge that it might have happened, they're allowed to hold you up to 6 months during the investigation stage. If I was guilty of anything, I would have been charged long ago. And we're going to talk about charges soon because I still believe they're going to attempt to charge me. But we're now approaching the end of the 6 months they can keep me under a form of arrest for without charge. Typically in Romania, when I was first arrested, the guard said, within 2 weeks, you'll have your indictment. I was like, 2 weeks? He goes, yeah, everyone gets charged quickly. Nobody waits 6 months for a charge. If they arrest you, they charge you, like every other country, right? The fact they've waited 6 months and gone into my entire life and attempted to find something shows they don't have a case. Why I believe it happened is because they didn't have a case when they were trying to hit me with this garbage, and they thought, you know what? If we put him all over the news, if we slander his name completely, there was a hotline set up. If you're a girl who's been hurt by Andrew Tate, call this number in the UK. A hotline. So they were attempting to use the media to find what they wanted. Months go by, months go by, months go by, case file's empty, nothing's happening. My lawyer's saying, when are we going to close this case file? Like, yeah, we're just waiting for some papers, we're going to close it, we're going to close it, we're going to close it. Around the time I was canceled, things started appearing in the case file again. They started spying on me again. Very interesting that it happened around that time. I don't know if they understood that I wasn't protected by the political class of the USA. I don't know what happened. They started to build this case, and they spied on me for all of these months, spending millions of euros, spying on me everywhere I went, trying to find evidence of a crime. Eventually, they get to the end of their legal limit to spy on me, and they don't have any crime. They don't have anything. So in my current court case, we have 2 Americans who lied, the ones who we have the conversations between them saying they're going to get an Oscar for lying to the police. We have the CCTV of them coming and going. We have their Uber records showing they can travel the country freely. We have their phone calls with their mother where they're saying, yeah, he didn't hurt me, and my boyfriend caught me. We have all of it. We have all the evidence. We have those 2, and then there's nobody else who could possibly even take the stand. I don't believe, as high level as this Matrix attack is, I still don't believe a Romanian judge is going to put me in jail with the dossiers. I've seen it. It's garbage. I don't think I'm going to end up in jail. But it's just taking years of my life, damaging my influence, having bad things to say about me, keeping me under control, keeping me locked in a house. That's all they want to do. They have no interest in the truth. There's no victims. There's no one to take the stand.
Do you know who Sophie is or Alice is or no?
Yeah, so the BBC,
Ali?
that's really interesting. So then the BBC says, well, we found victims because the BBC have done enough investigative journalism to understand that the case is garbage and there's no victims. So they said, well, we found victims. They found one called Sophie first. That was a few months ago. I think I was still in jail when Sophie appeared.
Is that her real name?
No, that's her fake name. So they have a girl with a fake name called Sophie. They don't show her face. They ask me, what do you think about Sophie? How can I comment on Sophie when Sophie isn't real? Firstly, you've made her up. Secondly, I don't know who you're talking about. You're saying that 9 years ago, I was emotionally controlling? That is the most subjective garbage accusation. What does that mean? 9 years ago, I said you shouldn't party with those guys in the club. Is that what I said? I don't know what I said. I don't know who she is, if she exists at all. And they're saying 9 years ago, you were emotionally controlling. Sophie said so. Who's Sophie? We're not telling you. What's emotionally controlling mean? We're not telling you. What comment do you want me to? If this person even exists, which they don't, then I destroy the BBC, make it very clear to them that Sophie doesn't exist, on repeat, because she doesn't. And 2 days later, Alice appears. What's interesting about this is that DCAT, the federal agency inside of Romania, along with help from international partners, have tried so hard, spending millions of euros with federal level tools to find a victim so they can put me in jail. And they can't find anyone. But the BBC just pulls them up whenever they want. The BBC does. Where do these people come from? And I say this every single time. If anybody believes they've been wronged, male or female, by me, go to the police. Go to the police. I encourage you to go to the police. All these people say, we don't want to go to the police. We just want to stay on the news. What, is that because you're not real? Is that why? That's pretty convenient. I mean, I thought I was a bad person. Why don't you go to the cops? Oh, because you have no evidence and it doesn't exist? That's why.
Are all these accusers in the UK, not even in Romania?
Not even in Romania. So Sophie and Alice are supposedly both from the UK. And Alice's story
To
is...
correct, it's not Alice. I said Alice, it's Evie. Evie or Evie or something like that. E-V-I-E.
It's all made up names. is
It's
your
all
point.
made up names.
Yes.
So Evie,
We could call whatever name we want, but...
yeah, Evie is saying 13 years ago I choked her or something.
Yeah. By the way, when is the 6-month time limit?
End of this month.
Okay. And can we reference the tweet you just posted a couple days ago?
I want to stay on this. She
Sure.
was commenting on Evie. You were going to say something about Evie, what she said 10. So she's claiming 10 years ago or 13 years ago, you guys had the consensual sex the first time. She comes back for the second time around. According to the story, she says she was being, your hand was on her throat, strangled me. She was passed out for a minute. And then she came back and she said, I did not approve of the second time having sex after she was passed out. So these stories they're making, and then she says, the guy asked a question saying, how come you didn't do any police report back then? She says, well, because it's not fully rape and it's not that, because it was consensual and I kind of wanted to be there and I didn't tell anybody about it 6 years later. There's way too many things that doesn't give it credibility for somebody to say, I didn't do anything about it then, but 6 years later I told my friends, 3 or 6 years later.
Yeah. And this is the thing that's scary. If you say to any red-blooded male, 13 years ago you had sex with a woman consensually and she's now unhappy about how that sex happened. You can get, any man on earth can get screwed with that. If this person exists at all. And like you said, she refused to go to the police if she exists. And she's saying it was consensual. I think last night they aired it on Newsnight and they said, why are you coming forward now? And I think this actor, the person literally said, because now he's rich and famous. They literally said those words. That's what they said. Oh, because now he's rich and famous, I think it's unfair. It's asinine. I don't understand genuinely how a man can protect himself in the Western world anymore. How can you even exist anymore? If this is what they're going to hit you with as soon as you get to a certain level of influence, there's no man on earth who's safe from this. I said this to my judges. I had a few male judges. I said, they could do this to you. They could do this to anyone. They can do it to you or me or any man watching this. Any man watching this. They can put in the BBC 9 years ago you did something. They won't tell you her name. They won't give you any chance to defend yourself because you have no idea what they're fucking talking about. And they will print it on repeat until you lose your job and lose your bank and lose your social media. And then you're going to sit there bankrupt and depressed. And then they're just going to move on from you. And if you don't die, if you're like me, a cockroach who refuses to die, if you sit around and refuse to go away, they're going to make up a new one. It's crazy. And it's genuinely scary. And you're not safe from it anywhere anymore. I will say right now on this podcast, I encourage absolutely anybody who believes I've harmed them, male or female, to go to the police with evidence and we'll go to court. Let's do it. I don't harm people. If I was harming people, I wouldn't be out here as open as I was. The biggest criminals and the biggest gangsters and the most heinous people on earth don't have social media. You know this. Do I see a guy with an Instagram pretending he's a gangster? He's not a gangster. The real gangster hasn't got Instagram. But that's the reality of it. You think I'm going to become the most Googled man in the world if I've been running around hurting people? It's absolutely insane. And I think there has been a shift in the consciousness. I think, especially because of COVID and a few other things, people are starting to understand that all these people do is lie. I think people are starting to understand that. And the harder they try and hurt me with these lies, the less people believe it, which is scary for me. Like I said earlier, it's scary. They keep coming up with more garbage. The bullets keep bouncing off. So now they're sitting around going, we can't convince the world this person is a bad person. How do we get rid of him? That's the scary part.
You were going to say something.
Yeah,
follow-ups on that if you want to go
6
there.
months, it's
6 months coming up right now.
It's coming up
Yeah.
June 29th, I believe?
Correct.
Okay, you put out a tweet recently. You said the 6-month time limit is running out,
Yeah.
right? There's zero evidence against me unless they invent something against me, right? Yeah. And then you ask a poll. You said if they charge me with an empty bullet and it still takes a year to beat it and it allows them to save face, they're hoping that the world will basically forget about all this.
Right.
What do you think they will do? And you gave people 3 options. Option 1, let me go. Option 2, charge me with no evidence. Option 3, invent and frame attempt. The results were 38% let me go, right? 35% invent and frame attempt. And option 2, in third place, charge me with no evidence, 27%. So 38%, 35%, 27%. So basically, it's pretty even. So what do you think is going to happen here?
The people, the 38% of people who think they're going to let me go, I think are extremely naive. I go to sleep every night. Every morning, I wake up instinctually at 5 a.m. because that's when they raid your house. I wake up at like 4:59. I just fucking shoot up because they busted my house 3 times now. It's not nice to have a bunch of men with guns bust in your house. It's not a nice experience. So every single morning I wake up expecting them to just turn up again with something else and drag me back to a prison cell. Who knows what? They'll just make it up. But the fact they made up this particular crime is because it's a hit piece and it's a slander on my reputation. If they would have done the same thing, let's say for tax evasion, would anyone care? No. Oh, rich guy didn't pay a piece of paper. No, no one cares. We have to hurt his name. Human trafficking. Think about that. I said this to the judge. How does it make sense? A man with no criminal record, who is financially successful, decides to begin to human traffic at 35 years of age. I have no financial motivation. It's clearly not my personality profile. I don't need money. Why have I begun to human traffic from nowhere? It doesn't even make any sense from a pure logical perspective. There's no motive to the crime. Who have I human trafficked? Who is the victim? There's no victims and there's no motive. And here I am on house arrest. It's insane. So yeah, it's genuinely intimidating. I don't know what's going to happen next. I believe they're going to try and charge me with the garbage they have, and I think what they're trying to do is just hang it over my head and keep me afraid.
Do you think the idea of trying to either silence you or make you irrelevant is working? Meaning, do you think you're more relevant today than you were on September 1st? Is that strategy they're implementing working?
No, they're failing. And the reason they're failing is because God's put me in a position where I have to lead from the front. I think that in the days of old, when politics used to mean something, I believe in politics as long as the leader of the country charges on his horse at the enemy at the front. Then you're allowed to be king. Then I'll listen to your laws. That's politics. When you send other people's kids to die in a war and you sit on your ass, that's not politics to me. But now I'm in a position where I'm spearheading, by God's plan, the rights of basically every man on earth. They could do this to anybody. So I think any man with a brain who's thinking is looking at my position and going, they could hit me or my friends or my son or my dad the same way they're hitting this guy. And that builds a degree of affinity amongst my audience. So no, they failed. They failed and they've made a hero out of me, which is what I'm actually scared of. I am scared by the incompetence of my enemy. I'm scared by the fact that they are failing so monumentally. If they had been half successful with the cancellation, none of this would have happened. If the cancellation made me an obscure internet personality, it'd be over. If I would have just allowed them to beat me, none of this would have happened. But I beat them. And that's the problem. Now I'm sitting here going, okay, well, after I beat the BBC, after I destroyed the BBC, Tristan gave me a high five. He's like, oh, you wrecked them. They're going to look so stupid. I said, bro, we've sunk the HMS Hood. HMS Hood in World War II, HMS Hood was the British battleship. It was the flagship of the Royal Navy. And the Royal Navy was obviously renowned. It has been for hundreds of years. It was the best battleship. And it was up against German battlecruiser, the Bismarck. And the Hood should have outgunned the Bismarck. And it was the best German ship against the best British ship. By absolute fluke, the Bismarck, on its first volley or second volley, landed a shell perfectly through the top of the hood and blew up the ammo magazine. And like in the first shot, within minutes, destroyed the entire HMS Hood. Killed like, I think it was like 3,000 people, 2 survivors. You can find the video on YouTube, the hood blow into pieces. When Churchill found out the hood was sunk, he said, sink the Bismarck, don't care what it costs. He sent every ship, every plane, every sub diverted from every other mission. Doesn't care if we lose every plane we have, don't care if we lose the RAF. We cannot lose the hood without him losing the Bismarck. Sink the Bismarck. When the Bismarck sunk the hood, all of the crew were celebrating, except the captain. The captain updated his will. He updated his will and telegraphed home to his wife and said goodbye, because he knew. When I destroyed the BBC, my brother was celebrating, I knew. I said, Tristan, no. You don't beat the British Broadcasting Corporation and make fools of them like this without some new bullshit. We sunk the hood. And he's like, oh, we'll see. Oh, who's this? Evie? Evie. I fucking knew it. I'm winning too well. I'm scared by the incompetence of these clowns. But I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. Am I supposed to lose? I'm genuinely looking for guidance here. Am I supposed to roll over and fucking lose? When they're lying about me and slandering my name and trying to put me back in a fucking dungeon? Back with the cockroaches? All I could do is protest my innocence, but they're such idiots, I make them look so stupid, and then there's egos involved. You think Lucy Williamson hasn't been called into a meeting room with some BBC producer saying, you made a fool of us? Yes, she has. There's egos involved. Big businessmen with business interests have ego investment in hurting me now. And I keep winning. So I don't know, I'm in a very precarious scenario. Do I continue to win? Do I let them win a bit? Do I just roll over and shut up? What am I supposed to do? I don't know what the right move is. It's difficult.
You sincerely don't know what the right move is.
I sincerely have decided that the best thing I can do is stay true to my faith and stay true to God and tell the truth and fight. The right move for me, I believe, is to fight and fight to the end, because I think that suicide is always the wrong option. I believe if you're put in a bad position, the best thing you should possibly do is fight to the best of your ability, which is what I'm going to do. However, if I was looking at it purely logically without any kind of ideological motivations, perhaps if I would have shut up when they wanted me to, I wouldn't be in this scenario. But that's just not who I am. You know, Alexander the Great didn't have to keep conquering. Genghis Khan didn't need to take Vienna. He could have just chilled. He kept going. So I feel like when I'm in a position where I don't know what I'm supposed to do, the best thing I can do is just look to God and tell the truth. And that's what I'm doing.
I want to ask you one more question regarding human trafficking, because this is a heinous charge, or
Absolutely.
allegedly.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is not lightweight stuff. You famously ran a webcam business.
Correct.
Perfectly legal. Yep. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, I can't tell you how many women are doing OnlyFans these days.
Yep.
Webcam business.
Yep.
How much of a reason was that a correlation for the human trafficking, the sex trafficking, the webcam business? How much did they correlate that to? Well, he must be human trafficking. He's running a webcam business. There's no correlation.
Zero correlation.
So they haven't even charged any of the webcam business for any of this.
Zero. And what's crazy is...
It's crazy. His people assume that, right?
It's crazy because, one, it's not illegal. And two, you can go drive down the high street of Romania. There's webcam studios it's one of the most popular businesses in the country. It's not even illegal. And that was a past life. You're talking about something that happened 10 years ago.
It was that long ago?
It was about 10 years ago, yeah. It was at the very beginning of it. The very beginning of the whole idea of that industry.
Connect is an application which allows you to take a minute to connect with influencers from all around the world. My name is Andrew Tate, and I'm available to speak directly to you on Connect.
I think it's just perception. I understand I have this perception. And I think a lot of people who are also dislike me, a lot of the reason they dislike me so much is my perception. I've had people who say, I hate what you say. I say, what do I say? And after talking to them a while, they say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Of course.
It's the perception of aggression. It's the perception of masculinity that they're afraid of. It's not even the words. They might like the words. It's my delivery. So I understand perception can be reality to a degree. I accepted that maybe the first month I was in jail. I understand when you have a message which is complicated, and masculinity as a whole is a very complicated tapestry, that the best way to instill it and teach it is to break it down to its core beliefs. So I've evolved way beyond Lamborghinis and chicks, right? But masculinity as a whole is a very complicated tapestry. You need to have the emotionality. You need to have the times you feel like crying and you don't. You need to have the times you can be aggressive. You need to have the times that you can be violent to protect your family. It's very complicated. And you can't teach that, especially to the young generation, in spite of the constant propaganda they have coming in their ears. very easily. So I break it down to a very core message, and the core message is that I have financial freedom, so it's hard to tell me what to do, and I have sexual access because I'm respected by women, and I have a good network because I'm respected by men. I break it down to those core things, and those core things are what I build that's how you build the tapestry of masculinity, because if you don't have those 3 core things, you can never build the rest of it. That's the beginning of it. If you don't have those 3 things, it's hard to build the rest. So anybody who doesn't look into my message properly, I mean, I'm sure these people who are after me have never listened to me speak at length, ever. Ever. They just look at a picture. He's on a boat. There's 3 girls on the boat. There's no way those girls are happy with that, because my wife hates me. And there's 3 of them. So he has to go to jail. And that's what's happening. It's that baseline. I truly believe it's that baseline. But how else can I teach my message, as complicated as it is, without first breaking down and proving you have success in the most core levels of it, right? Before you learn to box, you jab and you cross. Before you do all the complicated stuff, you do the basic stuff. So a lot of it is people looking at my message, not understanding how detailed it is, not understanding how positive it is, looking at the baseline instincts which I teach and which I use to advertise my success as a whole to people to show and say, look, I clearly know what I'm talking about to a degree, because I have things that you want. And you're a man, so you can't tell me you don't want them. Every man wants this. Every man wants one of these. And they take all this and they try and weaponize it and use it against me. And you're right. It's feminism as a whole that has this idea that if a man is a man, unapologetically, and he doesn't apologize for being a man, that he's a bad person. Which we've discussed at length, and I've discussed a bunch of times, but it's truly the most crazy thing about all of this is when shit hits the fan, it's exactly the kind of men they hate that they want. Every single time. Every single time. You can go out to a bar in America and you can stand there and argue with a feminist and argue with her to the end of time. And if someone ran in there with a gun, she would say, hey, you go. You're the misogynist. You go protect me. The feminist guy who was on my team, I don't want him to go. I want you to go, please.
We don't want Dylan Mulvaney on the front lines.
Of course not. And it's hypocritical. And it's hypocritical, and it's done on purpose. It's purported by the Matrix. It's done to attack the baseline masculinity of men because they don't want men to be masculine. Because when you're masculine, you say no to things. I saw a really interesting study once that it had testosterone level, and it was linked to your capability to disagree with people. The higher your testosterone level, the more likely you are to disagree, because at a baseline level, back before we were more civilized than we are today, if you disagreed with someone, you had to fight him.
Interesting.
You had to fight that man. For you to sit and say you are wrong, there had to be a possibility of violence. If you didn't have the capability for violence, you didn't say they were wrong. You just agreed with stuff, right? So they don't want men who are standing up and saying, I don't believe in X. They want to reduce our testosterone levels to our eunuchs so that we sit and say, well, I may not agree with it, but what can I really do about it? It is what it is. And then they have absolute control.
Do you think history favors that ideology? Or history, eventually, a group of men stand up and say, yeah, listen, we've had enough. This is not going to be happening.
I do believe that in history it's always been the same. I believe it's always been a select group of good men who are up against evil. And I think they've always been outnumbered, and it's always been difficult, and they've always suffered. All of them. When I was in jail, the amount of letters I got from people, and it was just names of, and I'm not comparing myself to these people. This is the letters I got of Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, everyone who was unjustly imprisoned. Everyone's gone to jail. Because when you stand up for something, they end up trying to put you in jail. When you're a good person trying to do good, the evil, the matrix as a whole, is going to try and throw you in jail. That's what they do. That's the punishment for it. And history's always been the same. It's always been a small group of outgunned people who stand up, who are, to the detriment of themselves, too principled to allow injustice and evil to thrive. And they stand up and they're outgunned and they're outnumbered, but they're like, no, I have to tell the truth. If you play a video game and you're the good guy, when you get to the boss at the end, he has more life than you. He has more hit points and he moves faster and he's a cheater. He cheats. He cheats. The bad guy cheats. But you still win because you're good. And that's how the battle's always been. I would love for the world to be another way, but I don't think it's ever been that way. I think if you find any time in history, it's always been the same story. And now I'm in the position where, like I said earlier, what am I supposed to do? Do I have a life path in which I can genuinely help people? And do I have a life path in which I can genuinely do some damage to the evil to the world? Or am I just going to disappear like a coward and let them lie about me and do my time and shut up and delete my Twitter account and just go away?
You know how sometimes, like, I've been in sales for quite a while. If a guy who doesn't have any responsibilities and he's single, he has a $30,000 a month, boom, he's going to Vegas, having a good time. Yeah. And then he doesn't work as hard until he runs out of his $30,000. 3 months later, I got to go make the $30,000 again. Oh my God, panic, I got to pay my bills. I'm behind on the phone. Yeah. Let me buy this watch and make 40 grand. I'm going out again. So it's very inconsistent, right? And then as you're in sales longer, you're like, okay, the profile of somebody